And you are tuned to the Old Tube Radio Network.
How do you do, ladies and gentlemen?
Greetings to you.
Wherever you are, for music and the latest news from home and from afar, the station for you is
OTR, Old Tube Radio.
the station for you is
OTR.
The station for you, OTR. That's the Old Tube Radio Network here at 27085, Channel 11 in the Central Valley of California, beaconing worldwide at oldtuberadio.net and listening for those classic glow-in-the-dark tube radios from 1958 to 1978 when they were the thing to be heard. And it is yet that way again tonight. And the Old Tube Radio Network, we are listening for radio number 1.
Number 7. 45.
And we've got 2 in the queue. Paul, take a short step or 2 up into the green room. We will be right to you shortly. In the meantime, let me pull up the tube radio list here and write down Mr. Ed, SWL7, and back to you, sir. Find out what you've got.
Well, this time, the E.F. Johnson Model 223 with a Silver Eagle D104 attached.
For you fans of tube radios, you've come to the right place, and fans of the E.F. Johnson Company, you are doing good tonight because we've got one of the more popular, maybe the most popular tube radio that E.F. Johnson put out, and that's the Messenger 223. Give us a transmission, and we'll see if we can't find a picture of that radio for the video here.
There you go. Yep, you've got a picture up I see on the oldtuberadio.net without the little light on there for transmit, which is exactly like the one that I have here. Although mine, the little light bulbs for the S-meter and channel selector have been changed into blue LEDs. So they got a nice glowing with the tubes and the blue LEDs. Gives it a nice little effect.
And maybe even more importantly, for those of us who have the older tube radios that have the incandescent little 12 volts or whatever they might be, bulbs inside, you probably won't have to change them very often.
Yes, I have definitely changed quite a few of the light bulbs of which you speak. I have a few radios here that seem to like to eat them for some reason. But yeah, the blue LEDs have been in there since I bought the radio and haven't had to mess with them since.
Good deal. From Waseca, Minnesota, back in the day, Edgar F., that's the EF, Edgar F. Johnson and his company, two-way radio manufacturer, and they were founded in 1923. Sources tell me that the EF Johnson today is a wholly owned subsidiary of JVC Kenwood of Yokohama, Japan, and I did not know that. I just looked up some information. I did not know that EF Johnson and JVC and Kenwood are of the same ilk. So there you go. You're in good company. But back in the day, 1969 through 1972, when these radios were being produced and selling like hotcakes, it was Waseca, Minnesota.
There you go. Yep, and a nice, simple, easy radio to operate. And yet, receive-wise, it is comparable to my Browning Tram or even modern radio. So they did a great job.
Doing a great job since, what did I say, 1923, when Edgar F. Johnson began his company as a mail-order business selling radio transmitting parts to amateurs and ham radio operators, active in World War II defense production. After the war, the company introduced its Viking line of amateur transmitters, among them the Viking Valiant, the Ranger, and Pacemaker. You will probably hear, if you listen during the big skip time, especially some of the guys down on Channel 6 are running those big 80-pound Viking Johnson transmitters, putting out 65, 80 watts at least into whatever 10,000-watt amplifier they're running. But here on the Barefoot 5-watt 223, it is sounding good. Radio number 1, we'll log it in at 8:40. Give us another transmission on the E.F. Johnson Messenger 223. It is sounding good.
Thank you, sir. Oh, yes. Definitely no amplification on this side. like you say, just the tubes and the tubes alone. And with that, we'll let you get to the next guy, and we'll go ahead and get some more tubes warmed up.
All right. Warming tubes is a good thing on a chilly Saturday evening here in Central California. The Old Tube Radio Network, Real Radio's Glowing in the Dark. We've been doing this since the mid-'80s. We've been on the air for about 33 years and streaming with the video and audio for about 5. A lot of our tube radio operators have been with us for most of the time, but we welcome anyone new. You don't have to have any prior experience, SWL numbers, or anything like that. You just need to key your tube radio microphone and say break OTR, like this gentleman did ever so few moments ago. Hello, Paul.
Hello, guys. I got to remember to turn this thing on with a sidebar in the front. This is my model CB1 by Helicopters.
Ooh, I was going to feature that radio. Sometimes during the week I will put up pictures of radios, and we have a really great shot of the very first radio that Helicopters put out for the Class D side. Of course, Helicopters doing things for amateurs before that and receivers. They built televisions and all sorts of good stuff. When we have from courtesy of SWO 135 a really, really great shot of the CB1, and we'll put that up now as you give us a transmission.
Okay. Well, as you can see on it, it's got the great Magic Eye on it. That Magic Eye tube on it. And it's closing up real good on modulation, so it's doing a good job. It says it's doing a good job anyway. It's a big radio. It's got 11 tubes in it. And it's sure a lot bigger than most of the tubes radios they had out. Like the Heathkit was real small. Matter of fact, I can't even get down the hill with the Heathkit. Doesn't have enough power. But this one, I got enough power with 11 tubes in it. Anyway, back to you.
Okay, that's quite a few tubes. I think when they went to the Little Phone series, they were down to 7 tubes, so they might have started solid stating or dioding the little rectifier tubes and things to cut down on the size of that. The interesting thing, well, there's many interesting things about this Helicopters, but it's basically a speaker case. I think that matches some of their speaker cases. I have an HT37. It's an amateur radio that was produced about this time, and it runs the same knobs. There's kind of grayish knobs with the chrome insert. The Magic Eye, of course, you see them a lot on the early 60s radios and some of the late 50s radios used for, well, the Magic Eye was used for tuning in radios, and it was also used as a modulation indicator on many, many things, and that is the tube you see right there in the center of the picture. Interestingly, very plain, huh? Just the on-off control, the push-to-talk bar, and then you have a separate microphone. Now, will that lock down? Is there a way to push it and lock it into position, or do you have to keep your hand on it the whole time you're transmitting over?
I don't think there's any way to lock it in. If you maybe put a stick in between the bar and one of the little places up there. Now, you got to hold it down. So when I want to read something too out of my book here, I have to hold it down and put the mic on the ground. So it's not convenient like the newer ones are. But boy, I'll tell you what a sweet radio. One thing about it, it doesn't have the ventilation on it that I really like. It's got two great fairly good sized screens mesh on the top cut. You put your hand up there and you feel like a little stovepipe coming out, nice and warm. Feels good here in the shot. So anyway, that's boy, it's about the size. Oh, I'm talking on not a stock mic. This microphone is Electro Voice, model 727 ceramic banana style, like the Brownies use. So it's not stock. I wish I had a stock mic like the picture shows. I'm looking. Maybe someday I'll find one. Back to you, Dennis.
Okay, you'd have a little bit different audio quality. I was about to ask. I was going to say your audio sounds too good to be the stock mic, which I think might have been a Crystal Element when the Green Arrow keys up on his radio, which is the one we're looking at. He's got the original microphone that we're seeing in the picture, and it definitely sounds like stock audio to Helicopters CB1. Checking out those 11 tubes, yeah, there's a rectifier tube that isn't in the CB3A, the 6E5, which is the modulation Magic Eye tube isn't there, so that's where some of the extra tubes are going. And like Mr. E.F. Johnson, like Edgar F. Johnson, W.J. Halligan was the founder of the Hallicrafters Company in 1932, manufacturing radios. And before that, like Mr. Johnson, he was selling parts. He did part sales for some years, but in 1932 decided the time was right for a handcrafted amateur radio receiver. Hallicrafters big on receivers. If you search for them, you will find many, many Hallicrafters receivers. How many of you have had a Hallicrafters receiver at one time? Raise your hand. I'm raising my hand. I've had an SX99, which was I had in high school that I borrowed from a ham, and then I have my SX25. It was SX96, but my SX25 is up on the shelf, and I've had a lot of fun with that. So Hallicrafters, a great company, thanks to William J. Halligan, out of Chicago, by the way. Out of Chicago, and by 1938, he was doing big business. His Super Skyrider in 1935 was a big selling receiver, but we're glad that he got into the 11-meter side of things. Paul, I want to hear more from the radio. Your radio number 2 on the CB1. Give us a transmission.
Yeah, okay. This does not have a squelch on it. Well, as you can see on the front, on the left-hand side bottom, that red light, this is the power light. It just tells you that you turned it on. On the right, it's got the volume and the on, and of course the great magic eye on the middle of top up there that tells you modulation. No meter, but I like to better than a meter. Anyway, this is quite a nice radio. I'm with you. I like Hallicrafters a lot. Tell you what, if they made them all like this, I'd be having a dozen of them. I got Hallicrafters, but they're not this type of radio. This thing just is amazing how they built the first one like this. Thanks, Dennis, for checking it in.
All right, you have good audio. You're just above my noise level, maybe about an S unit above, and when you modulate, you get a little bit more signal coming out. So if you listen to the archives, you're going to hear that you're not full quieting, but I think you're going to be pleased with the audio. I was impressed with the audio that you've got coming out of that. Hallicrafters, 1959 is when this was manufactured, and the early radios, 1958 or 1959, the Class D service was supposed to be a non-hobby communication types. The radios were supposed to be simple because, in theory, the people operating them were not techs. You weren't peeking and tweaking and tuning and loading. You were basically doing exactly what's there, turning the radio on, pressing a button, and talking, giving your call letter and saying base to unit 1, and then giving a command like pick up a loaf of bread or bring the parts over or whatever. So they kept things simple. And this radio is true to form on that. Radio 2, I'm going to go back to you one more time for a quick transmission on the Hallicrafter CB1. Thank you, Paul. Always great to hear that one.
Yeah, Jay, it's a big radio, but it needs to be a big radio with 11 tubes in it. They're filled up, very nicely spaced. It's just a quality first old radio. Thanks, Dennis.
All right, and how do you know you have one of the first radios made for Class D 11 meters? Well, you can find more information about that in Sam's CB Photo Fax number 1, page 59. The Old Tube Radio Network, Real Radio's Glowing in the Dark. We're listening for radio number 3. And I want to wave a hand to our listeners, viewers at Google, YouTube. Of course, EDA 396 is always waving a hand from frozen Nashville, Tennessee. Yeah, we're hearing from our stations out that way that the Arctic blast, the jet stream has sunk down and is creating some havoc. So stay warm in the radio room with some tubes. And also from Vidor, Texas, hearing and listening in. Yeah, we wish we had some conditions. The nighttime conditions, of course, it'd basically be E-skip. I don't think we can get from Central California to Texas, but we encourage all stations listening to try something like this where you are. It doesn't have to be an old tube radio night. It can be a just get on the air radio night once a week or whatever, as you many of you know, the bands are a little bit scarce with activity these days, unless the skip is flowing. But so why not at night pick an evening or two and get on and enjoy the radio like it used to be. We're looking for radio number 3 on the Old Tube Radio Network.
Number 7.
And hello, 7. You may have radio 3 for us.
Oh, I do believe so. It definitely has tubes. The Tram TR27E with the Electro Voice 638 microphone.
It definitely has tubes and all sorts of good stuff. And the ever popular big, well, I won't say it, but the huge meter on the front. I'll find a shot of the Tram here so people know what we're talking about when you take a transmission.
Oh, there you go. As far as S meters go, the thing's gargantuan, I guess you could say. It's massive, yes. It's about 3 inches tall and 3.5 inches wide, which, of course, is quite large for the radios here. Yeah, in fact, I think it's got the biggest meter on anything I've got here, as a matter of fact. Nice 5x7 speaker. There's nothing small about the radio.
No, as we can see here, the shot, and I believe that we are lucky enough to actually have a photo, or be showing a photo of the radio on which you are talking. The S meter, we were talking about Hallicrafters receivers. This is the typical size that you might see in a very large amateur radio or shortwave listener receiver. Because that was, that's how you'd have that big dial log people in, and the S meter, which is your window into where that station is, where there's S9 or 20/9, and you watch the signal kind of float in and float back. So that's kind of fun. The big green machine sounding good on the Old Tube Radio Network. Back to you.
Thank you much. Yeah, they definitely wanted you to know that it was Tram. It has the big Tram 23 right in the middle of the radio. Of course, it has a little TE logo underneath that. And that S meter says Tram Electronics, nice and bold. Like you say, they definitely wanted you to know.
Certainly. This is one of the 27 series. I believe Harvey checks in on a 27C, and there's different variations of that. So 1963, 62, 63, 64, they were sort of had this one model, and like a lot of the companies back then, I think they put them on the bench and just tweaked a little bit and said, let's put in a new, let's put out a new model because we've added this knob, or we've changed this component, or we've made something different. And so there was always different versions. So you say you have a 27E, and someone will say, well, mine isn't quite like that. And that is why, because the companies were making them. It wasn't off of a conveyor belt. They were actually hand building these things. Sounding good. What can we say about the Tram? 3.5 watts maximum. I'll move to an advertisement the next transmission round. So if anybody's at oldtuberadio.net, they'll see that Tram spent a lot of money advertising on these things. Back to you.
Oh, yeah, they sure did. And they would usually put in little tips of what to do and to tuning your radio also, which I find was pretty cool. But, yeah, in fact, right on the top right-hand side, in fact, even in the pictures you can kind of see there's a little like door up there. It's got 2 little screws that takes that little plate off, and you can reach right in there to your crystals. And also, the bulbs we talked about changing are right there handy to change without having to take the whole case off.
Cool stuff. So we morph from 1959, where they don't even give you a squelch knob and a push-to-talk bar, and you turn it on to, 3 years later, they kind of get the idea that, or they've gotten the idea that the operators are a little bit more cerebral than we thought. So we're going to give them some knobs and peeking and tweaking. And here's the ad. It was called Tram Service Tip Number 1. It says, when tuning the 3.15 megacycle first conversion receive oscillator coil L2, tune for maximum DC voltage of pin 7 on the 6BK7. And this is on an ad, so I think they've realized that people are a little bit smarter than just keying up and asking for a loaf of bread. Radio number 3, the Tram TR27E. Give us another transmission, and thanks for bringing it by on this last version of 2017 for the Old Tube Radio Network.
That's right. Last time we'll be checking in the tubes for this year. Well, I'm glad I got that one in there, and I definitely have one more to go. because my Robin is giving me some little fits there. So we'll have to try to get it running for next year.
All right, and we will try that. We got the Jingle Singers coming up, and I want to wave a hand to a really great guy, Mr. Radio Ham Guy. Larry is listening in from probably very cold Albert Lee. Again, some of you may remember we talked to Larry via the Echo Link a couple months ago, I guess, maybe 6 months ago. I can't remember when we did that, but it was a while back. He's got a great station. He does some good videos, some really great videos, not only for amateur radio stuff. If you're thinking about getting your amateur radio license, it'd be a good videos to check out. He is also an amateur radio operator that doesn't diss the CB guys, and he has some great 11-meter radio videos as well. So, Larry, Happy New Year to you. Thanks for kicking in. I hope all is going well out there. That's Radio Ham Guy. Let's see what the Jingle Singers are doing on the Old Tube Radio Network.
How do you do? Ladies and gentlemen, greetings to you. Wherever you are, your favorite slot on the dial by far is known to you as
OTR, the Old Tube Radio Network.
the station for you is
OTR.
And we're looking for radio number 4.
45.
And boy, you know, a good day fishing can never be this good. You throw out the line and there you go. Hello, 45.
Yeah, Dad, I went from the first radio to practically the last 2 radio here. This is the Jim Chavez GTX-5000.
All right, the GTX 5000. So we have gone from 1958-59 to 1977. We went from the beginning of Class D tube radios to the end of the tube radios in Class D. 40 channels, solid state is doing its thing and sounding good. This has got a nice signal coming out of it, and we'll find out more about it as we go back to you. Over.
Yeah, well, of course, it's manufactured in Japan. Panasonic channel had them manufactured, and the Japanese people did a great job on them. And Panasonic did a great job of getting them set up that way. So it has been strong radios, very strong radios. The only thing, this thing's a hybrid, and it does have some different circuit boards in it, such that it'll give you trouble. I don't know what you do in a case like that. You know, Harvey or something like that might be able to help you, but at the point you might not be able to get anything for them. I'll stay with old tubers if I want to keep the tubers going. A lot more stuff in there you can replace. Anyway, that's about it I got to tell you about the mic and everything. I'll get back to you.
All right, we got a picture, not the greatest picture, kind of a monochrome picture, but you can see the style. This was the Panasonic chassis that went through many, many radios from about 1976, 74, 75, 76. Then they changed from 23 channels to 40 channels. And it's similar to, I think most of, not all, but most of the radios at that time that were 40 channels and tubes used this chassis, similar to the Robin T240D, the T-Berry, the Shakespeare, the Colt. And if you go to oldtuberadio.com, it looks like we have some notes on doing some modifications to that to get the audio a little bit better. But it sounds pretty good. I think they might have even been plate modulated, but the last of the last, not like the good old Hallicrafters, but sounding really good. It's Radio 4. If you've still got it on, give us one more transmission before you go. And thanks for giving us the sort of tail end and the other end of the tube radio era for 11 meters.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's really a pretty radio. It's the kind that you wouldn't mind putting in your front room, you know. The wife would like it. So Hallicrafters, they don't look this fancy. This one wasn't the fanciest one. Actually, the 240D, I think, had the same interior just about and the thing, but they had a lot more lights on it. This got just 2 lights on the thing and a meter. But anyway, I'm running a Turner Plus 3 amplified desk mic on the thing. The stock mic, the radio didn't like it, so I had to get that little extra out of it. Anyway, thanks a million for checking in, Dennis. 45, guys.
All right, and thanks for bringing it by. Yeah, the later radios started putting clocks and wood cases, and 73, 74, the CB craze was really happening, so the radios sort of moved from the workbench to the living room. Radio number 4, the GTX 5000. from Gemtronics. This is the Old Tube Radio Network, Real Radio's Glowing in the Dark. This is our final net of 2017, and can you believe it? We have been doing this since the mid-1980s. 34 years of listening to, talking about, and checking in the classic tube radios from the Class D 11-meter Citizen Band radio service. Thanks to our tube radio operators that put out a lot of time and effort to keep the radios up and going and the spaces at their locations to do that, and just putting up with putting up with all the net controllers these years, looking for Radio 5. And Larry, Radio Ham Guy, mentions that it is 9 below zero right now in Albert Lea, Minnesota. 9 below zero. We've been having sort of sultry winter weather here in the mid to lower 60s. So it is definitely, it is definitely an old tube radio night. And want to say hello to, checking in from beautiful Brentwood, California, X4000. Waving a hand to all the old tube radio operators and those shortwave listeners. Thank you, X4000. And hello, Paul, from North Fork, about 35 miles from my location up in the foothills. You are sounding good, over.
Yeah, you're right, this one. My helicopter CB7.
Ooh, I'm so used to checking in the CB3A, I often forget that Helicrafters made quite a bevy of, in the early 60s, of little phone CB something series. And we'll be talking with the CB7. I see it there. I don't know why it's not showing up on my chart. I'll see if I can grab a picture of it here. Over.
Yeah, you got a picture of it in there. It's not my radio, but you got a picture in there. You'll find it. Anyway, yeah, this is not the radio that my CB1 was. But you know what? They did a lot of neat things on this radio. You could check your tube. You could check. Yeah, you got it. That's it. That's up. That's even got the dial on it. No, it doesn't. It's up mine. Now you can check your crystals and all that. Change. You don't just lift up the cover. Had little patches on it. Very nice idea. What we had. It's a lot smaller radio than the CB1. Of course, it has a lot less tubes too. So anyway, back to you, Johnny.
All right, the Helicrafter CB7. I don't have too much technical data on this one to know the manufacturer. I'm going to assume, since if they went chronologically with the numbers, that this may be 1964 or 65. It still doesn't appear to be a 23-channel radio. I see the S meter put on the side there. Also, it appears that, like a lot of the little phones, this was house current and DC current as well, because I see like a mobile mic clip. And this even has a microphone that plugs into the front. So don't know if you're using one of your amplified microphones or not, but the audio sounds good, over.
Okay, yeah, I got a manufacture date of 1965 on this. One of it was right. 64 or 65 would be real good on this one. They just have the knockouts up there around where you look at the radio. You see the little red button above the helicopter's name on the thing. And right at both of those, you had one little screw. You got to unscrew it, and that plate will come off, and you can put your meters in there. I tell you, they had probably, I don't know what all the meters they had on it. I've never seen one completely, fixed up with the meters in it. Most of I've seen they're blacked out. I don't know how much they wanted for meters at that time, but it's nice to have one that would show the meters and work and everything like that. Anyway, nice little radio. It's heavy, well built. It can go either way. I think I see the voltage on the thing. Yeah, it's 12 volt, AC 12 volt. We'll go either way on the thing. 12 volt, no 6 volt. That's interesting. Okay, thanks, guys.
All right, thanks for bringing it by, Hallicrafters. And William J. Halligan, 1932, starting that company. And this is one of the results out of Chicago. I think they were still, they may have moved by this time in the mid-'60s, but they were still being produced. And sometime not too long after that, they sold to the Northrop Aircraft Corporation. That was a subsidiary of Northrop for a while, and then they started producing a lot of their items out of, importing them out of Japan. But I had a couple of Hallicrafters walkie-talkies and a FM 1000, which is over on the bench over there somewhere. My first AM/FM radio with a big analog tuning dial where I did my first shortwave listening and DXing on the AM broadcast band, and that was from about 1969, and I think that was made from Japan. The audio sounds good. The signal-wise, you're about the same as a CB1, about S8, modulating up to an S9. And doing a good job. So thanks for yet another Hallicraft. It's the Old Tube Radio Network. Real radio's glowing in the dark. And are the jingle singers ready? Yes, they are. They'll tell you about that friendly place to be on a Saturday night.
How do you do? Ladies and gentlemen, greetings to you. Wherever you are, the friendliest station for you by far is known to all as
OTR, the Old Tube Radio Network.
The station for you is
OTR.
And we're looking for radio number 6. One, two, Internet audio. Internet audio check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Testing Internet audio levels. 1, 2. Now, here's something interesting. In the early days of radio building, you needed what was called an RCA patent license, because RCA must have had some patent on building radios. So when Hallicrafters tried to start building radios in the early 30s from their location at 417 State Street in Chicago, they ran into difficulties when they were sued by RCA. And then what happened is an opportunity came along to purchase the Silver Marshall Incorporated, which was a radio company, and with it they had an RCA patent license. So by purchasing that company, they got their patent license that they needed to get out of trouble, and their first radio that they produced was in 1935. And in 1938, Hallicrafters was 3 years later doing business in 89 countries, and was manufacturing some of the most popular sets in the U.S. So, great company. And I found the deal. 1966, Halligan sold the company to Northrop Corporation. So, if you've got something from 1966 and before, you are in the true Hallicrafters company. If you are 66 and after, you've got the one that was subsidiary of Northrop. And the reason I know that is because I live down in Southern California, and my dad worked at the Northrop Corporation, or Northrop Aircraft, and sometime around then he came home with this big brochure with all these radios and things, and I was instantly saying, ooh, look at all this stuff. But of course it was amateur radios and it was expensive. And then he brought home some walkie-talkies that must have been, some extra stock or something. And that's how things started with the Hallercrafters CB11A. And I remember I got a big company discount to buy my FM 1000 AM FM radio because it was part of the Northrop Company. So I wish I would have been a little bit older and into ham radio at that time. I probably could have got myself one of those nice Hallercrafters Hurricane, whatever they were, sort of 1 kilowatt radios. The Old Tube Radio Network you are listening to. If you're tuned in at 27085, anywhere in the RF zone throughout the U.S., but specifically in Central California, or maybe you're listening in at oldtuberadio.net or watching at Google YouTube, we are listening for and talking about the classic tube radios from 1958 to 1978 of the Class D 11-meter Citizen Band radio service, listening for our radio operators and collectors to key up with their radios, and radio number 6 will be next.
Checking in.
Oh boy, we're gonna, on our last show for 2017, we are going to milk this one for a lot. We've got one check-in on page 1 as 00 and a good 8-week run there, Mark. We've also got another check-in on page 2, if I can find it. Yeah, it's right behind page 1, isn't it? For SWL 50, and if I work my cards right, we have got radio number 6 glowing in the dark. Over.
Yes, you do. Golden Eagle Mark III. Standard Bananarama mic, and hopefully next week I'll be checking in the DAM tram.
All right, trams are a good thing. Brownings are a good thing. Anything glowing in the dark is a good thing on a Saturday evening. A triple play. That is hard to do. That is very hard to do with one key down. Radio number 6, the Browning Golden Eagle Mark III, sounding mighty nice, and also got you checked in on the SWL side as well. Hope you are staying warm, and I know you're going to have a great 2018. Thanks for checking in.
Copy that. And a Happy New Year, everybody. Hope everybody stays safe. I had to get the tram back down to the shop and see why it's not happy.
Sometimes they take a little bit of peaking and a little bit of tweaking, but hopefully it will be back and sounding good.
Number 7.
And number 7, with possibly radio 7, over.
Well, there you go. Not a triple play, but a double play, I guess. But another Browning SSB Mark III.
Okay, back-to-back Brownings. Like I mentioned when we first started, I thought it was going to be a Browning type of evening, and we haven't had any until the second hour, and now we have 2. Well, I neglected to put up a photo, a bird's eye view of the Browning when Mark keyed up, because we did it so quickly. So I've got a really good shot of a Mark III, so let me put that up for anybody it might be tuning in or listening that's not familiar with the Mark III, but just about everybody is. And we'll go back to you for a transmission. Over.
There you go. That is definitely the Mark III. Almost identical. There's slight differences between mine and that one. That one has the gold case. Mine has the fake kind of wood-colored metal cabinet. This time I'm also running the banana mic instead of the D104.
Okay. I guess that's the Electro Voice that I want to say it came with the set, but maybe it didn't. Maybe it was the one offered if you wanted to get the official microphone that Browning put in with it. And I'm not a real Browning aficionado. There are some Facebook pages where the guys know everything. And of course, Barkett Electronics, where you can get parts for your Browning and trams. I'm not sure what would designate the differences in knob colorations and case colorizations and things like that, if they were a special issue or if they were time issued, that is to say the early radios were this and the late radios were that. But anyway, that's what we're showing. Cliff always does gives us great photos. And your radio sounds good to go with it. I know you've got a couple of modifications in the ping, which a lot of people did, and we appreciate how things sound when the microphones are different.
Yeah, listen, there you go. So you can go ahead and do the longer scream, and of course with the Banana, it's much easier to play around with that sound than it is with the big old D104.
Yeah, the original way to do it, and give me a foot switch working here. The original way to do it was separate transmitter, separate receiver. You're hearing a bit of feedback, which we call a ping when it's a Browning. And for those of us back in the day who were jealous and couldn't own a Browning, if you were listening to the SWL check-ins, there was a way to kind of get that little cling at the beginning of your key up using a D104 microphone and some various little clips and metallic things to do that. So the Browning moniker with the ping was coveted by all, even if you didn't have one of the radios. From 1972, when they first started the Mark III, which was sort of take everything that Mark II had and cram it into both cases, and you've got the Mark III. And it was a great seller up until 1976 when they decided, we've got 40 channels going on and we need to update. I don't know how many of these radios they sold at $700, but I'll tell you, I think almost every single one is still out there somewhere today because they were really well built. Over.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, this one I had one problem with, and luckily the guys at Red Monkey and Harvey over there did a great job of getting it all doing what it's supposed to do so we can keep on talking here on OTR and keeping the old tubes going.
Which is what we've been doing and what we try to do here on the Old Tube Radio Network, keep the tubes glowing. Of course, Ed's radio sounds very good. He's got a 30 over signal, so he's certainly full quieting with the great Browning audio for radio number 7. Plus, I will mention for those who are checking in radios, or for those who might like to, boy, I need to hear that radio again. We do archive the net here, archive the program. 2 places to see it. The best place, probably go to oldtuberadio.net. There's an archive button at the top of the page. If you click on that archive button, it will, the OTR magnetophone will load all those little 3-inch reel-to-reel tapes that we record things with, and you will pick the date and whether it's an SWL check-in or a tube radio check-in, and click on that and use your Universal Media Net web player to hear your radio back. Give yourself your own radio check, and we do keep the videos up for a little while, too. You can hear it that way. Thank you, Ed, for Radio 7.
And just like that, a different microphone for a little different flavor. Back to the D104 gold-plated limited edition. Get a 2 in that way. All right, we'll let you get to it, and we'll kick back and take a listen.
All right, and a good way for anyone thinking about changing microphones on the radio. You can hear the different tone qualities. Of course, you got to check it for your voice and your room acoustics. That one sounds good. That one actually has probably a little bit better tone quality, but of course the Banana mic has the true Browning flavor from day one. The Old Tube Radio Network listening. And I heard a Harvey out there, KB6GFD.
Yes, you did. Ed just woke me up with that.
I'll let him know. That's funny.
Roger. Okay. W602.
All right, and Ed, you will be pleased, well, maybe you will be pleased to know that your loud eagle woke up SWL20, who was probably sleeping near the radio. He just came on the crossband and mentioned that you woke him up with your audio. Oh, wait, was that the ever popular 27 over? Not a problem. Happy birthday, Happy New Year, and sounding good. We'll get you checked in. KB6GFD. And from the crossband, SWL20, kind of wiping the sleep out of his eyes, but likened the audio, and we'll give a big SWL check-in to Mr. Dwayne. Happy birthday to Dwayne, and also getting SWL27 checked in.
Break OTR.
And while we're on that SWL list, break OTR, go ahead.
70 late check-in, please, Dennis.
All right, not a problem. Let me find your page for the Morgan Canyon magician that Well, definitely a magician, a station that figures out how to take little pieces of wire and portable radios and batteries and go somewhere where no one would ever go and try and make radio contacts. Now, that is magic. We got you checked in.
That's the magic of radio, man. Have a great night, and Happy New Year if you don't talk to you, Dennis. Thanks.
All right, I managed to not do anything really, really bad in 2017, even though I've got a day or so left to ruin that. But I think we'll be okay. We're looking for a great 2018. I hope you are having one as well. Thanks for checking in. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. 357. We haven't seen you for a while on the video side. Thanks for checking in and waving a hand to everybody on the Old Tube Radio Network. 357 getting down. And we'll get you proxied in next week on the new 8-week roster, KB6 GFD.
Roger, 2-9.
I think a lot of people are recuperating from the Christmas holiday time. We've got probably a big evening coming up tomorrow night, and it is cold everywhere. It is really, really cold in some places, as Larry lets us know, at -9 degrees. But here on the West Coast, we're having some cold weather too. So the best place to be is by your glowing tube radio and checking in on the Old Tube Radio Network. Let's see if the Jingle Singers are in the warm studio, can help us out here, tell us about the latest style and the best place to be on a Saturday.
You're listening in the latest style at
27.085 megahertz.
your dial. That's
Channel 11, Old Tube Radio,
in wonderful.
Fresno, California.
We are looking for radio number 8. Okay, what I'm going to do, for those of you who are cold out there, the best way to warm up, as I mentioned, is near your tube radio. And a lot of us who were SWLs before we were tube radio operators, we warmed up by the glowing dials from our shortwave receivers. So I'll put up a little video here of, I believe that's a dial off a Hallicrafters. The kind of the nice orange glow from a big box you would be sitting in front of that, if you lifted the top up, probably had 11, 12, 14 tubes, all putting out a little bit of heat, and the big S meter. So there you go. This is better than the fireplace. Warm up to the glow of the Hallicrafters dial.
Yes, I remember listening to the tube-type shortwave radio, multi-banded. Man, there's a great big console type, big old piece of furniture. And first time dialing around that thing, it actually, listen to the different countries on there. I thought was, like you say at the time, magical when you're a kid.
That's true. The older, what I call broadcast radios that, as Ed mentioned, that typically were pieces of furniture. That if they were in a tabletop, they were usually in a nice wooden case or a nice plastic case on the later models. And the console models, sort of pre-television, were these large cabinet configurations with big speakers on them and the large dials that not only had the AM broadcast band, but also, especially sort of for wartime things, even before that, had the shortwave bands, as you can see on the dial here, from 2 megahertz, 4 megahertz, 7 megahertz, all the shortwave radio stations that you could tune in as well. So you've got to use your imagination, and rather than a CRT screen, to figure out what was going on. But a lot of times you could stare right at the dial, or as Ed said, the magic eye tube, and watch it dance around. On those, the magic eye tubes were used for tuning, so the maximum signal strength would put the two illuminated wedges or sides of the tube closer together. So your goal was to make those two little illuminated edges of the tube touch, and then you knew you were tuned right into the station.
I think that's the reason why a lot of radio shows did not make it over into the moving picture industry, because the imagination was always much better than what they could ever put on a screen.
And that was proven by one of the big radio show guys, Stan Freberg, who probably had the last, I think with CBS, he had one of the last radio shows in the late 50s and early 60s. And he has a classic bit that he does where he spoofs television, saying, "Okay, guys," and of course this is before computer animation and everything, but he said, "Okay, you TV guys, try this," and he makes the world's largest, I believe it is banana split, but he does it on radio, and he has planes coming in bringing the largest bananas and dropping the ice cream out of the sky, and doing all that with sound effects, and you use your imagination. So yeah, you are correct with that. The imagination is a great thing. What you can do on radio with a few sound effects records and some good announcers would take many months and lots of money to do in the early television days. Or some very giant props, anyway.
Oh, there you go. And look what Orson Welles did with War of the Worlds.
We never quite created that much panic here on the Old Tube Radio Network.
Pandemonium, maybe. Panic, no.
Maybe when we used to interview or allegedly interview the FCC commissioners and find out what crazy things they were doing to the CB band. That was our best shot at creating panic.
Hey, you don't want to be making fun of the War of the Worlds. I had to listen to that in the early 90s, and you do that with the lights turned off, that's going to freak you out.
Well, it seems elementary now, but then you realize back in, was it 1938, 39, whenever it happened, that that was, radio was it. Whatever was coming out of the speaker was real stuff.
Well, I think it was that combined with the fact that everyone knew that World War II was just knocking on, well, at least it was at that point in time, it was kind of knocking on our front door a little bit. So the paranoia was already there, my God.
Yeah, you were too scared hiding under the bed to actually look out the window to see what was really happening.
I'm trying to think of some rude comment to make about just everyone just being scared to find out what our politicians are going to be doing these days. But let's not go to something negative. How about talking about a nice Browning, our 27S23, if you'd like to check that in.
I would like to check that in because we are looking for Radio 8. We still have another 30 minutes or so to go. And let's see, our two previous Brownings were from the 1970s, the Browning Mark III. And you have one of their offerings from, I think, the mid-60s. We'll get the true information on that. But the first Browning Eagle, the R27, just like you said, if I would listen, the R27 S23. What I'm going to do, I'm looking for an advertisement. Let me pop up an advertisement first that shows their mobile version called the Raven and then the Eagle that you have, and go back to you for transmission.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that Raven up. I think the same Raven is being sold over and over and over again on eBay. At least I think so. It's the same one that doesn't really work well, and I think it's missing the same knob or light or something. Or anyway, the radio I'm on right now is not as small as a Browning Raven. This sucker is a ginormous two-piece radio. I can't remember, each time we talk about it, I can't remember if this is the first or second generation of the Browning R27S23, and I can't remember how to tell the difference. There's no Golden Eagle on the speaker, on the receiver, so I don't know if that's a dead giveaway right there. The only bird-looking thing on this particular radio is right in between on the transmitter, the channel selector knob, and it's just awesome. I love looking at this huge on-the-air lamp right now. But in between those two items, there is a painted, I guess it's a eagle. Yeah, it kind of looks like eagle with a little alfalfa guy from. Little rascals. It looks like an eagle with a little thing sticking up at the back of his head.
And I believe that was the first set that had the eagle silhouette on it. It wasn't the flying eagle like they had in the later models, but that's how you knew it was the eagle. Be nice to talk to somebody, find out where they got the eagle, what prompted that. 1964 through 66, so then various Series 1 and Series 2 of the R27 S23 in that 2 years, and the price was high at that time for radio, but in comparison to the later models at $350, not too bad. But considering you were still, at that time, 1964, 65, 66, you can buy a general radio telephone. I think we're still under $200 in the $150 range, so you're looking at an expensive radio. The Series 2 base station was the R27 Series 2 receiver and the S23 Series 2 transmitter. Some of the differences from the Series 2 are larger meters, neon modulation indicator. I think that's the one, the neon modulation indicator, and the lighted, I guess if when you key up, lighted on-the-air indicator. So it sounds like if you've got an on-the-air light and you may have a neon, which would be a little orange glow modulation indicator, that you indeed might have the Series 2.
Yeah, you know what, I think you and I have had this conversation before. The modulation lamp that I think you're referring to, which is right underneath the meter on the transmitter, I don't think neon lights, aren't they either completely on or completely off? Whereas an incandescent bulb, obviously you can vary the light output depending on how much power you're putting into it. Isn't it a neon lamp? I don't think this is a neon lamp. Maybe you can enlighten me on that.
No, I don't have the schematics. I see that there's an operating manual for that radio at oldtuberadio.com. They call it a neon modulation indicator. And does it wink and blink at you if you or say are whispering or you're shouting into the microphone? Or do you notice that there's any difference in the intensity?
Testing, 1, 2, 3. You know what? Might have a point there. Testing, 1, 2. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. This does. It's not just on or off. It's everything in between too.
Okay, no, that doesn't really answer the question of whether it's neon or not, but I know it's indicating some modulation. Showing the set from SWL 58, and it has an extra piece that I know Mike doesn't have, so we'll point that out. The receiver being the larger unit on the bottom, the transmitter the second largest unit, and then the 180 amplifier. I guess that was the business. They call it business band amp, of course, because it wouldn't be type accepted for Class D regular use, but that was their amplifier, so that was a 3-piece set. And it looks like it's all glowing in the dark. It sounds good. I remember Mike on the walkie-talkie and getting his station together, and he sort of jumped right into high gear. I don't think you got the Browning first. I think you had the Robin first and then the Browning, but to have a Browning that early in the collection was quite a feat.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I mean, I've definitely grown soft in my old age. I definitely remember having to go and stand out by the pool at the 217, Cherokee 217, and then having to use the radio patio because the coax, it wasn't long enough to actually stretch inside the house. How things have changed. So I don't know how much we want to dwell on this lamp thing. I can tell you that you bought me enough time to run over to my bookshelf. This radio is in Sam's PhotoFact 10, which says March of 1966, and I think the information on the radio starts on page 5. I'm going to look this up and find out if it does talk about the kind of lamp that's in there. The only thing I can say, and again, I really don't know what I'm talking about, but I can say that in the Gazette, apparently, the manuals, the Sam's PhotoFact for the G11, I think I've seen 2 schematics for that radio, and I don't think that it even has a Magic Eye tube listed in there. I think if you look in the schematic, and I don't know, maybe if Harvey's listening, he can comment, because he and I have talked about this. But if you look in the schematic for that radio, even though most of us know that it does have a Magic Eye tube, I don't think it's listed in that schematic. I think it's listed as just a regular incandescent bulb. So after I get done chatting here, I'm going to go through here and I'll let you know if I find something out. But this radio is fun to use, definitely. I like I'm using the banana mic on this. I'd originally been using a Turner Plus 2 amplified mic, and I guess it worked reasonably well. It didn't feel that natural in the hand. It wasn't really ergonomic. I think I found myself accidentally hitting the lock to talk button or whatever. I was locking the microphone on too frequently and unintentionally. So I think this banana mic here, which of course is unamplified, that just feels a lot better. And for klutzes like me, you're not going to accidentally lock it in the transmit mode because there is no lock.
Well, I don't know if that's an FCC thing saying, well, you don't want people locking the stuff down, but you could get a microphone that would lock to talk, but maybe not that one. The plus for that microphone, of course, was it came out of the bass. You didn't on D104. You've got the bass and the microphone. You've got everything. You're swinging around in the air trying to orchestrate your ping. That one, the bass comes off, and now you have a nice little handy item that you can swing around and make your noise. There is an ad that I'm showing on the main page. I'm going to read from that. It's called New Features of the Eagle S23 Series 2, of course, courtesy of Browning Laboratories Incorporated, 1269 Union Avenue, Laconia, New Hampshire, 03246. New improved circuitry, rear illuminated selector dial, easier to read. I don't know what the other one was. I thought it would be illuminated. Aircraft-type miniature crystal switch assembly with 23 crystals. Clipper filter for higher average percent modulation without splatter. New crystal microphone. So that might actually be, if you've got one of the early microphones of that, might have been a crystal microphone, which would have been... And Brownings have that very punchy audio and wouldn't have a lot of low frequencies at all, which you don't. Spot function with tone and visual indicator. Larger meter reads modulation, forward and reflected power. Exclusive on the air indicator. Case in point. New neon audio indicator. This is off the air. They called it a neon audio indicator. So it might have been one of those bulbs that had the little coiled filament in there that glowed orange. I will have to see if I can find a picture of a early neon style bulb. Plus the ability to really get out. So that's the main thing. You now have the ability to really get out. So get out.
I'll never forget. You're talking about getting your signal out. I'm assuming. I'll never forget. I think once I got the antenna I'm using right now, which is an IMEX 2000. I think you kind of jokingly said, "Hey, well, great. Now you're beaming all the way into Minkler." And what a fun little town that is. I hope if there's anyone in Minkler, I hope you're enjoying the way this radio sounds. So, all right, well, I'm going to do some investigating. I'll find out what kind of a lamp I have, and if not, I'm going to attack the transmitter with the screwdriver. At some point in time, I'll give you a report as to what I find. But thanks for letting me check it in. Everyone sounds great on it, and I wish everyone the happiest of New Year's.
All right, indeed. And Minkler and Centerville are kind of down in a hole as you head out Highway 180. So if you can actually get out to Minkler, you're doing a good job on any radio, especially radio number 8, the Browning Eagle, the original Eagle R27 S23 transmitter receiver combination here on the Old Tube Radio Network. Let's head over to the Jingle Singers as they tell us about the magic of the Old Tube Radio Network.
What are the magic numbers?
27.085 megahertz, channel 11.
Are the magic letters?
OTR.
Right here in
Fresno, California.
Radio Magic
Old Tube Radio.
for you.
Okay, and this is what I'm thinking. Here's the image of your oldtuberadio.net, and I'll put up a picture. Here's the image I'm thinking that we're talking about when we say a neon bulb. It's very small. It would fit in nicely to the front of the radio. It has that neon-y orange glow from the two filaments, almost like a matchstick. And you probably would have been looking through the front of that, through the little cover over the top, and then as you modulated, those filaments would glow accordingly to the amount of audio you were introducing into your microphonium as it winked and blinked at you. So they're very small, almost LED style, but there you go. There's the neon bulbs of the 1960s. And what does Wikipedia have to say about that? A neon lamp, also a neon glow lamp, they've also got a good picture, maybe I can use that, is a miniature gas discharge lamp. The lamp typically consists of a small glass capsule that contains a mixture of neon and other gases at a low pressure and two electrodes, as you can see the two electrodes there, and an anode and a cathode. When sufficient voltage is applied and sufficient current is supplied between the electrodes, the lamp produces an orange glow discharge. The glowing portion in the lamp is the thin region near the cathode. The larger and much longer neon signs also use glow discharges, but they have a positive column. So there you go. And neon was discovered in 1898 by William Ramsey and Morris W. Travers. The characteristic brilliant red color that is emitted by gaseous neon when excited electrically was noted immediately. So there you go. Almost like a little tube, huh?
Yeah, that is pretty cool. Wow.
So there you go. You are looking, if you're looking at the page, you are looking into the front of that properly, or maybe the side. I'm not sure how they do it. And then they got a little pot over, but it's the neon gas. You're making it glow.
You know, I love looking through these old photo facts. The on-air window, that I guess this is referring to the sign, that I'm always so mesmerized by. That was part number, what's it say here? A is an Alpha 415. So, boy, maybe you could call Browning up if you broke something and order a new on-the-air window. That's pretty cool. It's part A415. Nice.
They might have it. I think the go-to guys for a lot of parts is Barkett Electronics. Barkett has a lot of pieces and parts. So if they were the ones that when Browning went out of business or stopped producing, they guess they bought whatever they had on the shelves at Browning Laboratories.
You know, I remember, oh boy, there was a web page that was 11-meter radio. And someone brought that up, and I remember spending a lot of time looking there. I think they had a bunch of Browning coffee mugs, too, and patches. My God, I haven't been there in forever. You're going to cause me to spend some time online tomorrow.
And you reminded me, I actually have one of those Browning coffee mugs that I probably should have displayed in the background or somewhere here. I'm just afraid I'll knock it off and break it, so it's safely secreted in a shelf somewhere. But I think I received that. In fact, I know for a fact that came from, as a present from SWL 45. I got those from Paul, and I think Jim SWL got one as well. But I actually have one of and they're really nice mugs too. They're big, one of the Browning mugs. So I'll have to remember to show that. Just a reminder, we have about 5 minutes left here on the Old Tube Radio Network. Your last chance to check in, whether it's a radio or an SWL item of interest for 2017. We will be here ready to take your check-in, and we are looking in the radio mode for radio number 9. And let me also say hello to those who are still hanging out with us at oldtuberadio.net. Brave in the cold weather. Hello to all the Fresno stations, the unknown stations. You know who you are, even though you're unknown. New York is in early Sunday morning there, I do believe. Dallas, Georgia, thank you. Fayetteville, North Carolina is still online. Not sure if they're listening or not. Nashville, Tennessee. Brentwood, California, X4000. Radio Ham Guy Larry up there in -9. In Albert Lee, Minnesota, Fresno, Madera, and the Bronx as well. We have a lot of stations from New York. If you ever want to hear, you got a great nice shortwave receiver with a good antenna. Head down to 75 meters, 30. I think the East Coast frequency is like 3885 or 3890. Those guys out there know how to run the big iron on the AM mode of operation. We do pretty good here with our 11-meter radios on a old tube radio evening, and we're looking for radio number 9.
Let's do some spelling.
OTR. 27.085 megahertz. Channel 11, Old Tube Radio. Old Tube Radio.
And Ray, SWO44, it looks like the internet is back up, but for how long? What we really need is some nighttime E-skip conditions. So looking at the sunspot numbers, we've had a lot of days with 0 sunspots. We are definitely in the bottoming out, starting up on the new cycle. So as I've mentioned before, if you're thinking about putting up antennas or getting that amateur radio license, now is a great time. The bottom of the cycle is always a great time to get set up, get your radios, build your station, work on your antennas. It gives you all of 2018, because when we start heading up the other sunspot cycle, it'll take off pretty quick, and you will be ready. I like the sound of that Kia. Hello, 75, Mr. Patrick at the microphonium.
Good evening. I thought I would try to get this old Browning Golden Eagle Mark III SSB 23-channel transmitter with a 40-channel receiver. See if we can get it checked in. I guess this is the last night for 2017, and I guess this poor old Eagle here would hate to go out without at least a little bit of a squawk.
Yeah, perfect timing as we click over to the 10 o'clock hour here in Central California. Patrick realizing that 2017 is coming to an end, and if you have a tube radio, it should get checked in at least once a year, right? Maybe even once a week. And we've got radio number 9, the Browning, and a very loud Browning, by the way. Nice loud audio. The Browning Golden Eagle Mark III SSB, doing a good job, over.
so enjoyable about the radio is the way it just casts off all these shadows. When you turn out the lights and you just kind of really sit there and enjoy it, and get a little bit of the dust burning on the old tubes. But at any rate, it's really fun.
Well, you mentioned something as a radio operator. The SWLs out there might not know this if they've never operated radio before, but there is, when you're driving the thing, there's the glow, and we were showing the dial before, staring into the meters and dials, but there's also, what is the word, olfactory, is that correct? Anyway, there is the smell that emanates from the radio, and I say smell in a good sense, in that it's the warm tubes, the burning dust, just like that new car smell, old car smell. There is the old tube radio smell, and it's a good thing. It can be a good thing. Let's put it that way. Sometimes it could be a bad thing, but I can tell by the way yours sounds that it's winking, blinking, and looking good.
Yep. It's looking pretty good over here. It's got this on-air light here, with this brass frame on the air light, and with that golden eagle right above it. Got the claws out and getting ready to snatch it off the face of my speaker here.
The eagle is flying. We checked in a little bit earlier, the original eagle, and it was just sort of a silhouette. But by the time they got the Golden Eagle series, they came up with the Flying Eagle. What we're showing here on the video and the other side is the top of the case of the transmitter with another picture of the Golden Eagle with its wings spread, and then what Patrick alluded to with the louvers or the vents that allow the lighted, the glowing, the light from the tubes to escape through those holes to put the shadows on the walls or on the ceiling or however you got the radio mounted, and also let out some of that tube radio aroma. Doing good for Radio 9. Back to you.
I really enjoy watching the shadows from the old tube radios. Each one is a little different, because the casing is different, but you always enjoy that.
And just about any radio will do that, whether it's from the glowing dials or the convection cooling tube vents coming out. Some of the radios had a cage, like my Regency Imperial. It's not even a solid case on top. You can look right down and see all the tubes glowing, and if you're lucky enough, and you've got good modulation, sometimes you can see the little modulation tubes glowing blue and winking at you. So it's a fun thing to do. So we encourage people out there, if they're thinking about maybe for 2018 picking up your first tube radio, you will have lots of fun, and more importantly, you will have a venue every Saturday, every week, to make sure it gets keyed up, and someone will hear it and will record it for you, and you'll be able to hear it back at the Old Tube Radio Network. Patrick, a good decision and a great choice of radios for a key down here in the waning hours of 2017. Thanks for bringing it by.
You're welcome. And I will let you go. But I was just sitting there thinking, you have to invest a little bit of money on these old tube radios, but if you weren't enjoying yourself at home on a Saturday evening, you'd be out there wasting money someplace else. And if you buy a radio, you can always resell it and get your money back.
That's a good point. Like a classic car, there is a definite resale market for these radios. The prices, unfortunately, the prices have gone up a little bit, but good deals are still to be found, and especially here in the area. Here in Central California, I do believe that Red Monkey probably still has some of the radios left when they had the big open house and sale a couple months ago, where he had stacks and shelves full of great working tube radios. He might have some of those still available. So if you're thinking about 2018 jumping into the transmitting side of tube radios, there are some venues right here in town that you can see them before you buy them and carry them home yourself, so that you don't have to worry about UPS delivering it for you in pieces when it should not be that way. And of course, like I said, the Old Tube Radio Network here for 34 years will be around to help you check them out, and we have a lot of great people on the air and around that can help you if you have problems or need assistance. Let's see. Are there any other stations that would like to check in before we sign out for our final broadcast net for 2017 on the Old Tube Radio Network? And the Jingle Singers, one more time, their favorite. I think out of all the jingles they have, this one is their favorite.
You're tuned to
OTR. Channel 11.
right here in.
Fresno, California.
Stay with us
Old Tube Radio.
and be modern.
And the reason it's their favorite is because whenever they sing that one, they know they'll be going home in a couple of minutes.
Well, Dennis, I guess you can close off 2017, and I guess I'll talk to you next year. So have a safe New Year's.
All right, I'm planning to be good enough to get on Santa's nice lists at the end of 2018. I think I was on the wrong side this year from the various lumps of coal I got, but I'm planning to do better, as I think as we all are in the upcoming year, and I'm sure it will bring good things for everyone. OTR, we're counting and amounting, and we'll be signing off here soon. Thanks, Patrick.
This is the Old Tube Radio Network. Ladies and gentlemen, stand by. It's time now for the current OTR totals.
And we'll do the current and final totals if I don't lose all the paperwork here. Let's see, what do we want to do first? SWLs, we had a total of, I didn't add the totals, but that would be 58, is that right? 58, wow. We did good on the SWLs tonight. We were shy on the radios, but good on the SWL. So a lot of people probably busy tonight, might not have had time to check in the radio, but they wanted to come by and say hi, and we certainly appreciate that. Radios tonight, we had 11 on page 1, for those keeping short. 11 on page 1, 17 check-ins on page 2, 17 check-ins on page 3, and 13 check-ins on page 4 for a total of 58, if I counted correctly. And here's Scooter. Hi, Scooter. For radios, we had a total of 9 radios tonight, and I guess my prediction came true. When we first started, I thought, well, maybe it won't be a Browning night, but the last 40 radios that checked in were Browning, so we had a 4 from Browning Laboratories tonight, but we like all radios, and we started off with E.F. Johnson Messenger 223. That was from Mr. Ed. At 8:40, at 8:46, Paul on the Hallercrafters CB1, their first offering for Class D Citizen Band in 1959. And what an interesting and great radio that is. Sounds great, Paul. We have it up on the archives. The Tram TR27E from 1963 was Radio 3 from Mr. Ed. And here's Scooter. Scooter wants to come up and say hi, except she's latched on. All right, there we go. Say hi, Scoo. There's Scooter. All right. We've got radio number 4, the GTX 5000 from Gemtronics. So Paul giving us the 1959 radio and the 1979 radio, all in the same evening. Radio number 6, Mark Monkey's uncle, our 00, exiting 00 for this 8-week period on his Browning Golden Eagle Mark III. And then another Browning Golden Eagle Mark III. That was Mr. Ed, Radio 7 from SWL 7. And then the Browning Eagle. Let's go back a few years to the first R27 S23 combination radio, Series 2, with the neon modulation light from Mike. Thanks for Radio 8. And then the very loud Browning Golden Eagle Mark III SSB from long-time Old Tube Radio Network aficionado, Patrick, Mr. Scrambler. So good deal on that. Anyway, I will say 73, everybody, to those online at, I get my mouse to work here, at oldtuberadio.net, still listening in tonight. I want to make sure I comment to everybody also over on Google, YouTube, our video people out there tonight. We had quite a few of them listening in, trying to stay warm. We will be back in 2018 to do it all again, because your radios sound great and we're glad that they exist. We have a lot of fun, and we've had a lot of fun over the years with these radios, and we hope that you will continue to enjoy them as well, and maybe endeavor to get your first tube radio in 2018 and join us. Thanks to SearchLawrence.com and Frodex for keeping the digital side up and running. And, of course, thanks to all of you for the old Tube Radio Network. 34 years of on the air. Good night, everybody, and we'll catch you next time. Have a great New Year's Day, New Year's Eve. Stay safe, and we'll catch you next year on the old Tube Radio Network.
As always, a great night, Dennis. Happy New Year to you and all the SWLs from SWL number 7.
And before I break something, we'll say goodnight on the YouTube side.
Hey, same from the Radio Land.